It is a fine Monday. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here today, host of Kennedy on Fox Business Kennedy. Also from FBN, Dagan McDowell, Democratic strategist Julie Roginski, and today's #1 lucky guy. There's a doctor in the house. Former presidential candidate and Trump supporter, Dr. Ben Carson, and he is outnumbered. We just did a little Instagram together.
Absolutely.
It's so good to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to be back.
This is what we call the nitty-gritty as we head into the election. So glad you're here. There's a lot to do.
There's a lot to talk about.
And my knee hurts, so we'll talk about that.
Oh,
some free medical advice.
Well, with Obamacare, you get as much free advice as you can.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Dagan's about to hit him up for a prescription as a whole.
Oh, goodness.
I only do heads.
Yeah, he's a brain doctor. We need that too, doctor. All right, I'm going to use my brain. Let's begin. With just 36 days to go, Donald Trump's taxes are in the spotlight following this weekend's stunning report in the New York Times. At an appearance in the past hour at a veterans event in Virginia, the candidate made no mention of the Times' claims that he declared a loss of nearly $1 billion on his tax return, or returns plural, in the mid-90s, which may have allowed him to legally avoid paying any federal taxes for 18 years. Legally is the word there that I used. To his critics, they say this proves he's been a tax dodger for years, but his closest advisors have an entirely different take on it.
My response is he's a genius. I mean, the reality is absolute genius. This is a perfectly legal application of the tax code, and he would have been a fool not to take advantage of it.
The genius of Donald Trump has been to make sure that he follows the law, which is exactly what he's done, and politically he has said that he's going to change these laws and that there's no one who's better suited to change these laws.
The Clinton campaign quickly pounced on the allegations contained in the Times report and saying it shows that Trump, quote, embodies a rigged system. And while Clinton herself made no mention of his taxes on the campaign trail yesterday, Hillary Clinton did tweet this. 3 pages of Trump's tax returns confirm he's a business failure who's gotten rich at your expense. Imagine what he's doing in the rest, or hiding in the rest of them. So you have run for president, and you have had people dig into every part of your life. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, there are a couple of things that I think are big takeaways here. First of all, anybody who knows much about big business knows that it's a gamble, and that there are failures and there are successes. Thomas Edison said he knew 999 ways a light bulb did not work. Most of you have heard the cleaning formula 409. Why do they call it that? Because the first 408 didn't work. But you know, you have to gather information from this. You have to learn from these things and move forward. So there are a lot of successful business people who can tell you about gigantic failures that they've had. The question is, can they rebound? And can they come back from that and build something that's great? That's what really needs to be looked at.
And to that point, very quickly, Bill Gates says, and he said this, you know, it's an important quote from him, that he won't hire anyone unless they've encountered great failure in their life.
Yeah, well, that's where it comes from. That's where wisdom comes from, if you derive it. Now, some people just allow themselves to be beaten down, they give up, and they go say, poor me.
But in fairness, Doctor, we don't actually know whether he's rebounded or not because he still won't release his taxes. But let me just say a couple of things and actually quote from Donald Trump himself. Quote, half of Americans don't pay income taxes despite crippling government debt. Donald Trump in February of 2012. Barack Obama, who wants to raise all our taxes, only pays 20.5% on a $790,000 salary. Do as I say, not as I do. Donald Trump, April 2012. Everyone is starting to feel the new tax hikes. You get what you vote for. Donald Trump, January of 2013. I can go on. The problem here is you have a hypocrite who himself has, by his tacit admission, not paid any taxes since I was in college, and I'm way past that now. And as a result of that, is instructing other people as to not only how they have to pay their taxes, but is in fact telling the rest of us that we have to pick up his tax burden because he's a failure at business. He's a failed businessman, and the rest of us have to pick up his tax.
So that's how you interpret it. But the way that he and others have talked about this, it is the duty of the person at the head of the corporation to try to work within a system legally that's already set up to pay as little as possible. I mean, that is kind of the game that is played at that corporate level, which is why this is legal. So then the question becomes, do you believe Donald Trump when he says, yes, he used a rigged system, that's how he knows how to fix it?
Well, the other big story out of this is that we have a tax system that is in dire need of revision.
And does this show how much revision is needed?
And I want to point out something that Dr. Carson proposed in his tax plan when he was running for the Republican nomination is he believed everybody should pay something. He wanted a $100 minimum tax that everybody would pay in. That means that every single American is a stakeholder in this country. Every single American is helping pay for our military. And I think that, but in terms of the
I'm glad you read my plan.
We talked about it before. The political messaging, though, I think that using the word genius, that his surrogates, whether it's Rudy Giuliani or Governor
or him
Christie,
on the debate stage saying smart.
They need to say, hey, anybody who has self-employment income knows that you can write off business losses even for years to come. Right. This is something any entrepreneur, any even small business owner knows how complicated the tax code is and knows how to basically, well, I think pay the least amount.
But again, this was legal. This was legal. And,
right.
and so now the anger becomes a man who had a multi-billion-dollar corporation was able to write down a billion-dollar loss nearly. I mean, that's commensurate. It's just different than a small business because they are not making as much.
He's an LLC, with all due respect. He's an LLC the same way most small businesses are an LLC. So let's not pretend he's some grand corporation like Apple or Amazon.
And that's why I said small businesses, it's not commensurate in the way because they're not making as much.
Well, but the point is, Harris, we don't know what he made. He lost $1 billion. You've got to be a genius.
That's because we have 3 pages of it.
Well, he should release the rest if he wants to dispute it. But right now, all I know is he's a genius at losing money. I will say his tax plan, which I also read, the average millionaire would get the average person in the 0.01% would get $1.3 million extra under Donald Trump. He's not fixing this plan. He's making it even easier for people like him to game the system. The rest of us who don't have these kinds of accountants, we're the ones that are paying for the roads that we all drive down. We're the ones paying for the wars that people like him and Ari authorize.
Let me get the doctor. I want to know, Dr.
The gas tax has nothing to do with that. The income tax doesn't pay for the roads.
Hold on one second.
Nor does the
Dr.
gas
Carson,
tax.
you wanted everybody.
It goes into the general fund, unfortunately. That's why the tax system is so screwed up in this country.
Right.
If Donald Trump were smart, he would say to people, you know what, I figured out a way to pay less taxes legally, and you haven't done that. You've paid way too much in taxes, and what have you gotten for it? Government is a failure on... I know that's not what he's saying, but that's what he should say. If he can make that pivot...
Now for a calm, relaxed response.
Please.
Okay. First of all, you know, I think what Donald should ask Hillary in the next debate is, do you hire accountants to do your taxes to make sure that you don't pay more than you have to? I would love to hear the response, because if she says yes, then she says, you're doing exactly the same thing that I and millions of Americans are doing. And if she says no, and he says, and you want us to put you in charge of everything when you're not being responsible? This is the kind of question he should ask. But the other thing he needs to point out is he has hired tens of thousands of people, and there are other thousands of people who derive income from his businesses. They pay taxes, a lot of taxes. What has Hillary done?
Well, she hasn't stiffed any people that she's done business with, as far as I know. I mean, he has. There's a whole...
As far
no, but
as
her
you know.
workaround,
As far as I know,
her
sir, but I can give
workaround
you,
is the Clinton Foundation as opposed to write-offs. That is her workaround, and he also needs to
I can give you chapter and verse on all the people he's...
comparison.
All right.
You got a tough job defending Hillary.
I got a tough, easy job talking about Trump's complete lack of acumen when it comes to business. He's a horrible businessman. He's scammed everybody who thinks he's not.
All right. So, Julie, you used the words genius at losing money, but you even admitted that we don't know how much he made. So the write-down as opposed to what? You need to see the rest of the tax.
I'd love to see it. Agree, Donald Trump, show me.
In order to make the claims that you're making, let's
show
move
me.
on. As Donald Trump comes under fire over his taxes, he's reportedly going to try to flip the script. The Washington Post is reporting the Republican nominee will try to show a stark contrast between how he made his money and how the Clintons made theirs. The paper says he's going to make the case starting today that he built a global real estate empire, employing thousands of people while the Clintons got rich on paid speeches. Senior advisor Jason Miller told the Post this. We're going to shine the spotlight very brightly on how the Clintons made their money. They were so broke when they left the White House, remember that they couldn't pay either of their mortgages. They haven't invented anything. They haven't won Powerball. They haven't so much as billed a single hour of legal work, yet they're worth a couple $100 million, end quote. Now, that was kind of the point that you were making.
Yes. Well, you know, it's pretty clear that something unusual is going on when people who are broke when they come out of the White House now have over $100 million. And, you know, the pay-for-play scheme that's going on, No one's discounted that. That's going on, and there's been evidence that that's going on. These speeches that are given, particularly on Wall Street, that we can't get the transcripts for. What has she been saying? And why is it that all of those people are contributing to her campaign and not to the other campaign? Obviously, there's a reason for it. It's not arbitrary. So, you know, I think the American people are actually a lot smarter than many in the progressive movement give them credit for.
Do you think they don't care about this, Dagan?
I think that they care about when you abuse the power handed to you by the American people, and how the Clintons, both Hillary Clinton and her husband Bill, why do you think Bill was getting paid that much money for that many years? Because he had access to her in the State Department, and so did the Clinton Foundation. They clearly used her job as Secretary of State for their to basically enrich themselves in power and in purse. And she can talk about her being an advocate for women and children all she wants to, but she's been nothing but an advocate for herself and her own personal privilege and her elitist position, lording over liberals across the country.
You know, Kennedy, in the primary season, time and time again, we would see Donald Trump, whether it were positive or negative, go into the next debate with all of the media focused in on him.
Yeah.
He's doing it again. What risk does either of them run in terms of this moving forward?
Well, you know, obviously it's going to be a different format in the town hall debate in St. Louis, and we're going to see different reactions from the candidates. You're going to see a lot more interaction, from voters. And I think voters have the exact same kind of questions that both Julie and Dagan are posing. They want to know if these two people, one of whom is going to run the country, if they are completely run by corruption themselves, if these are corrupt people and have compromised their business practices and their ethics and morals to the point where they're incapable of running the country. And they're going to be asking, hopefully, about the Clinton Foundation, about the taxes. And I think that if Donald Trump were smart, he would definitely shift the conversation over to this enormous tax shelter, which is the Clinton Foundation, and that pay for play. I'm sorry, you know, the fact that they were selling access, and she will more than likely become the next president of the United States, it has some egregious consequences for the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, some critics of the debate from Donald Trump's perspective were disappointed that he didn't do that and didn't understand why he might not have done it. I want to give you a very quick last word.
Well, my last word is this. Dr. Carson, I know exactly how you were able to make a living. You're a brilliant brain surgeon. I know how everybody on this couch is able to make a living. I also know how Donald Trump has been able to make a living somewhat. He's run a lot of businesses into the ground, whether the plaza, the casinos, Trump steaks, Trump vodka, I can go on. The problem is this. Here is a man who sold himself as a brilliant businessman who could do for the country what he has done for business. And all we know that he's done for business is taken almost a $1 billion loss and run multiple businesses. That's not all we know. Well, it is actually all we know. We don't know much else. He won't share his taxes with us. We also know the list of failures that he's encountered running businesses and how many people he has stiffed on the way doing that. Little guys that still have to pay their taxes while he's not. That's the difficulty that Donald Trump faces going into the final 3 weeks.
We actually know more than that because he had to do a financial disclosure.
Self-reported, sir. Come on, we actually have to see some real documents, not things that he's self-reporting.
I had to do one, and it was a real document, and it is verified.
Well, I believe that you did a real document. I'm not so sure about him.
Donald Trump is ramping up his attacks against Hillary Clinton, questioning whether she has been loyal to her husband. We're less than a week before the next debate. Is it good strategy to go personal? And Saturday Night Live kicked off its 42nd season with a parody of the first presidential debate. Alec Baldwin played Trump, and he's going to continue to do so throughout the election. We are hearing, do voters pay attention to SNL?
Sing along. All right, Donald Trump is ramping up his rhetoric against Hillary Clinton. Watch what he said at a rally over the weekend.
Hillary Clinton's only loyalty is to her financial contributors and to herself. I don't even think she's loyal to Bill. You want to know the truth. And really, folks, really, why should she be, right? She's supposed to fight all of these different things, and she can't make it 15 feet to her car. Give me a break.
There he is, President-elect Trump. After that comment, he imitated Hillary stumbling into her car during the 9/11 ceremony last month. This is all coming less than a week before the next presidential debate, where he's going to be under a lot of pressure to show that he is ready for the White House. The Washington Post reporting Republicans hope Trump will listen to his advisors by preparing more thoroughly and not falling into Hillary's traps. So I want to talk about that preparation a little bit, Dr. Carson. I know that you have been working with the Republican nominee. What would you say he has to do differently between debates 1 and 2, and are you confident he'll do it?
I'm very confident that he'll do it. First of all, a lot of people criticize him for leaving a lot of material on the table. But the fact of the matter is, you know the media. And if he talked about it the first debate, and the second debate, and the third debate, they're going to say, oh, he just keeps talking about the same stuff. He has nothing. This is nothing new. You know how they like to do that. So he will bring those things up at the appropriate time. But what is essential is that he doesn't follow Hillary down the rat hole, because that's the only way that she can win. She's completely bankrupt when it comes to ideals on taxes, on regulations, on education, on prison reform, on how to revive the economy, on jobs. Nothing that she can say on those things. So the only thing she can do is to get these psychiatrists to help her find a way to push his buttons.
All right, so, you know, I want to talk about that a little bit, because Hillary Clinton did lay several traps for him that he seemed to walk right into.
Can we talk about the timing of when she did that, though? Because, you know, she had a full hour and several minutes before those things came up. They were almost, I'm leaving the lectern, and oh, by the way, have you heard of this person, and have you heard of this, and have you... I clearly knew from the reporting that they were going to be one-liner ready. And you had to have known, based on her past experience.
Her team said that.
Look, her team is going to do the research that it takes to give her some fire. The question is, the debate was almost over. Did she feel that it was so desperately necessary at that point to bring those up? It's just a question.
Well, it worked, because she did it Monday night, and he's face first digging into the rat hole in the wee hours of Friday morning. So they knew what they were doing, and it worked. But what he did over the weekend, you know, as long as he's going after her, I think that that's a heck of a lot more effective than talking about a Miss Universe from roughly 20 years
ago. What about
ago.
going after her husband?
And, you know, Bill Clinton's fair game. He ran the country for 8 years.
Do you think voters care?
I think voters care to the extent that they are a pair who are corrupt, if you will.
And
they have been.
All right, but let's talk about this a little bit, Julie, because I think that what he did in the debate wasn't necessarily effective. He didn't have good counterpunchers. He was defensive when he didn't have to be, and he did go into some of those traps needlessly. And there were people who said that he certainly could have hit her harder and more precisely on policy, but also, you know, he said himself that he held back on the barbs. That seems to be what he's doing this week. Will that be more effective for him in St. Louis?
You know, we talked about this on Friday, and I still stand by this. The worst mistake that he can make, and I sincerely mean this, and I say this as somebody who's absorbed this for 20 years, is to go after her for Bill Clinton's infidelities, which is what he's threatening to do, and what essentially he has done since the debate. It only makes her a victim. I've said this for years. You and I talked about this on Friday. There's nothing that she's more effective at than being a victim. Look at her polling numbers. They consistently went up after Monica. They will go up again now.
Do you think that's why he didn't do it? I mean, I know he said it was because the family was in the audience, but do you think that's why he didn't go after her on those?
But I think he essentially did. So we talked about this before also, but there are two debates. There's the debate and there's the post-debate analysis. Right. And the minute he got off the stage, he said, I would have done this, but I saw poor Chelsea and I didn't want to do that to her, bringing it all up again, and then spend the entire week threatening to do it. It is a huge mistake. White, college-educated
women. I guess the way he can do it.
I'm not sure it's a mistake at all. The fact of the matter is there are a lot of young people out there, a lot of millennials. They don't know about all this stuff because the media, for the most part, stays away from it. So it needs to be brought up. But in terms of Hillary, it's not so much Bill's infidelities as it is the fact that she savaged the women who were involved and claims to be this great champion.
And, you know, but again, I think that she could play the victim there, because she could say, you know, what would you do if you thought that your husband was cheating on you?
Kick him out of the house.
Would you congratulate the person who did that? I think she has to be careful there. But I think what Donald Trump can say is, what's worse? You know, you say I'm a misogynist. You're going to have a predator living in the White House. Why don't we let people decide?
Because Trump has the same background. That's the problem. Trump isn't exactly purer than the driven snow. He's got his own infidelities that he wants to talk about. And you have Rudy Giuliani, his #1 surrogate, saying, oh, everybody cheats, it's not a big deal. If that's the narrative the Trump campaign wants to have, good luck with the woman vote.
You say Trump has had an affair with an intern in the Oval Office?
I'm saying that Trump cheated on his wife. I'm saying that Trump has allegations against him of sexual assault by his first wife. There are all sorts of things that I'm sure Donald Trump does not want brought up. And the reality is, if you're going to consistently blame the wife, not the husband, but the wife for her husband cheating on her, then I think there's an awful lot
I think you could make the argument that Bill Clinton and Bill Cosby have more in common than their first names.
Perhaps, but that's not Hillary Clinton. That's not on Hillary Clinton. And if you want to talk about that,
that's
a big mistake. What is the point?
The point is that she says that she's a great champion for women, and yet when women are involved in something where she has herself said you should always believe the woman first, why is she being
Maybe she didn't want to believe against her husband.
Calling the women that Bill Clinton had affairs with bimbos and pathological liars, that got a double thumbs up from her. Read the New York Times today.
Big mistake for him to do that with women. I'm telling you, women don't want to be blamed for their husband's infidelities, and you cannot blame a wife for disbelieving her husband's behavior, no matter how naive she was. I think that's a huge mistake, and it's not going to help.
I got to tell you a secret. Women are a lot smarter than you think they are.
No, I think
no. Mercy. Oh, it's getting hot on the couch.
That's not what I'm saying at all. I think women, I think you cannot judge anybody's marriage any more than I can judge yours.
And Julie, some iced coffee. We've got a lot of energy, and we've also got hacked emails. Those are not okay, but anonymously received tax documents, those are fair game. The new questions of media bias surrounding the New York Times decision to print Donald Trump's leaked tax records, why critics say the paper cherry picks what it prints to fit its agenda. Plus, could the honeymoon be over between Hillary and Bernie? Her controversial remarks about his diehard young supporters caught on tape ruffling some feathers. We will discuss.
Let's go back to Fox Top Story. New questions about mainstream media bias now after the New York Times decided to publish what it claims are Donald Trump's tax returns that were mailed to them by an anonymous source. Yeah, they just popped up in the mailbox, they said. Critics are calling the paper hypocritical because it once refused to publish hacked emails that showed doubts about the climate change. A Times reporter at the time said, quote, the documents appear to have been acquired illegally and contain all manner of private information and statements that were never intended for the public eye, so they won't be posted here. But a quick sift of skeptics, websites will point anyone to plenty of sources. The Trump camp says the documents were illegally obtained and has threatened to sue. But the reporters who broke the story say he has no case.
We're hearing from Trump's lawyer this morning. He's actually threatening legal action against you guys in the New York Times. What are your lawyers saying about that?
Well, last time I checked, it wasn't a crime to check your mailbox, so.
They're saying it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So it would be a crime for someone inside one of the tax departments, one of the state tax departments, to leak the documents, but it's not a crime to publish them?
That's what our lawyers are saying.
Okay, well, we have lawyers, too. We'll talk. We have this initial reaction from the candidate. Donald Trump tweeted shortly after the Times published its story, quote, I know our complex tax laws better than anyone who has ever run for president and am the only one who can fix them. Hashtag failing New York Times. Now, I did check with legal sources because I wanted to make sure I was clear on this. There is a federal law which says that no individual can release tax returns without the consent of the person who did the return, who is the focus of the return. And when you get your taxes done, you sign a document by places like H&R Block or whatever about that very topic. The Times is arguing, well, it popped up in the mailbox. We're not an individual, and good golly, it's important. We're willing to go to jail for it.
Well, unfortunately, the Times and many other news organizations really have no sense of integrity. And the reason that the press is the only business that's protected by the United States Constitution is because they're supposed to be honest and they're supposed to be on the side of the people. The founders realized it was going to be difficult for the country to be of, for, and by the people and let the will of the people work if the people were ill-informed. and the media was supposed to serve that purpose. But when they take sides, like the New York Times does, they completely distort the original intent. That's part of the reason that we're in so much trouble, and that's part of the reason that few people have confidence in the media anymore.
All right, so that's one way. And Kennedy, I want to talk about that double standard
Yes.
that I pointed to.
No, you're absolutely right. And if the Times is going to embrace this sort of open-door information policy, then they really do have to do it on both sides. But I would say that goes for places like the Washington Post. The Washington Post, if you remember, they are the ones who published a lot of the information from the Snowden leaks. And they were the ones who benefited and won a Pulitzer Prize because of that reporting. But then they came out against Edward Snowden and said that he does not deserve to be pardoned by the president, which was a very hypocritical move. You know, you have a lot of people who are anticipating what Julian Assange is going to say with the WikiLeaks, rather, is the New York Times. Yeah, they could be. There could be links all over the place, like sausages. We don't necessarily know, but will the New York Times post that? And you have a case of abstraction and bias where it's convenient for various outlets.
All right, I want to get your idea just on that media bias, that double standard, if you think it exists with us.
It exists at the New York Times, definitely, because there was the article that they published several years ago about it cast doubt about global warming scientists, and it came out of hacked documents from East Anglia University in Britain, and the reporter on that published in a blog that they would not publish or post all of the documents because they were illegally obtained. Well, you know what? They posted those very documents from Donald Trump's tax returns on the website. That the actual documents that they got in the mail are published on the website right now, but they got religion when it was involving a topic that is near and dear to their hearts, but when they want to take down a presidential candidate, it is wide open at the Times.
Well, who says they're legally obtained? Because there were two people signing those documents.
Illegally obtained. If they were if those tax documents were released, they're illegally. You're not allowed to release. The federal law makes disclosure of tax documents a crime.
And you're missing my question. My question is, who says they were illegally released? Who says Marla Maples didn't give it to them? There were two people signing that tax return.
And now you're making that. No,
right.
Actually,
that's
she
a conspiracy.
Can't. Actually, she can't. She would have to get his consent as well.
My understanding
even if those were even if the couple itself was on.
I believe different states have different laws about that, but they have, I think, 3 releases that they signed that they had to do that for Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. But the other thing I'm going to say, and I'm not suggesting that she did it, I'm saying that we don't know whether it was illegally obtained or not. The second thing I want to say is I find it precious that the same presidential candidate who was urging Vladimir Putin to release more hacked emails from the DNC is now all of a sudden shocked and appalled that leaked anything is being published. And the third thing I want to say is I'm not here to defend the New York Times, but who broke the email scandal with Hillary Clinton? I believe it was the New York Times.
Well, you are defending them.
I'm defending them by saying I think they've been hard on both candidates. I don't think they're in the tank for any one candidate.
Let's move on. More on the Clinton campaign, now delaying a Bernie Sanders event that was scheduled for today. He'll instead campaign on her behalf on Wednesday. The change in plans comes after audio was leaked from a February fundraiser, making Clinton's take on Sanders supporters very public.
They're children of the Great Recession, and they are living in their parents' basement. If you're feeling that you're consigned to being a barista or, some other job that doesn't pay a lot and doesn't have much of a ladder of opportunity attached to it, then the idea that maybe, just maybe, you could be part of a political revolution is pretty appealing. I don't think you tell idealistic people, particularly young people, that they bought into a false promise. You try to do the best you can to say, hey, that's his view, that's what he is offering you, but here's another way where actually we can achieve.
Her campaign defending those remarks, a spokesman saying, quote, as Hillary Clinton said in those remarks, she wants young people to be idealistic and set big goals. She's fighting for exactly what the millennial generation cares most about, a fair, more equal, just world. Bernie Sanders also reacting in an interview.
She's calling other ideas you pitched, not the ones that you two are working on together, but she called other ones false promises and said that what you were doing was indefensible. That must bother you.
Well, look, of course it does, but we're in the middle of a campaign, and trust me, if you go to some of the statements that I made about Hillary Clinton, you can see real differences. So we have differences. There's nothing to be surprised about. That's what a campaign is all about.
Dr. Carson, is this as honest as you will ever hear Hillary Clinton when she's standing in front of donors asking for money.
I don't know that honest and Hillary Clinton can use in the same sentence. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, if you go back, I've got a video, for instance, on my telephone where Barack Obama was talking about Hillary Clinton in 2008, and the things that he said about her. You know, the senator who has taken the most money from special interest and the level of dishonesty. And then later on to come back and say she's the most qualified person ever run for president. I mean, anybody who's paying attention knows that these politicians just spew anything that's on their mind. And it has no bearing to the truth whatsoever.
Well,
it's very sad.
Kennedy had a choice word when she heard the word barista, so I'm yielding all of my time to Kennedy.
No, you can feel her contempt, and I think there's actually a lot of crossover between what she said about the basket of deplorables and the young people living in their parents' basements. And that is, she despises people in need who don't need her. And she has such active contempt for these people, whether they're young people that she completely dismisses. You know, oh, they haven't gotten anything free, so they want to be a part of a political revolution because they're bored. What an incredible insult. And the fact that Bernie Sanders selling out, going on TV saying, she's exactly right. She's not exactly right. She's completely wrong here, and this is why she's hemorrhaging millennials at this point.
And I think that they didn't need to hear that.
Thank you, baby.
They didn't need to hear that. The young people didn't need to hear her say that. They knew that already because they can smell it from a mile away or 500 miles away. A Gallup poll release shows that voters age 18 to 34, they're going to come out and vote at the lowest levels since it lower than 2000, which is doggone pathetic for her.
Yeah, it is, and she needs to get them back on board, and this is not going to help. Although I will say, look, I have the same concerns with a lot of everything that Bernie Sanders talked about. I don't think free college tuition is going to happen. I know she's promising it now. I'm here to say I'm sorry. I don't think that's realistic, and I would hate for people who are going to vote based on that promise to vote purely on that, because that's unrealistic.
Well, you better tell them.
I'm telling them right now, and I'm probably going to get into a lot of trouble for it, but she's not being honest with them, and neither was Bernie Sanders.
Right. No trouble for truth, my friend.
Well, you see her lips moving, guess what? There's a lie coming out. They're often overshadowed in the 2016 race, but now the vice presidential nominees are preparing to square off in their first and only debate. We'll talk about what the candidates need to do in their hopes of a game changer tomorrow night in Farmville, Virginia.
Cue the running mates. They're about to get their time in the sunshine. Indiana Governor Mike Pence and Virginia Senator Tim Kaine set to face off in their first and only vice presidential debate tomorrow night. I need a drum roll or something there. Thank you. Some are now saying the stakes have risen for Pence after what critics describe as Donald Trump's less than stellar performance in his first debate and the tough week that has followed. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know Mike Pence. He's a terrific guy, very solid conservative, who will express himself extremely well. I think the biggest challenge for both of them is making a big enough splash so that the average person knows who they are. That's where the challenge is going to be.
So traditionally, the vice presidential debate has been one that kind of lets us know who'll be a heartbeat away, but it's not something that people particularly vote on. What do you think this time around?
I agree with Dr. Carson entirely. I mean, the problem for this rumble in the jungle with Hillary and Trump has been so amazing and has gotten so much attention that poor Tim Kaine and Mike Pence are almost forgotten, to the point where I bet you most people don't even know who's running this year as the number two for either party. And so you're absolutely right. I think that the challenge here is to get people to tune in. And the challenge, I think, especially for Mike Pence, because you'll acknowledge Donald Trump hasn't had the best week of his campaign, is to try to steer and right the ship in advance of next weekend's presidential debate.
But I think the question about taxes will be interesting because Mike Pence has released his and seemed to be in favor of the notion of that.
Well, and I want to hear more on the actual issues and maybe some substance.
You don't think they'll talk about tax returns?
In terms of tax policy, I want him
I'm thinking it's going to come up.
He needs to talk about what Donald Trump's tax policy is. Mike Pence, tax cutter in the state of Indiana, how does that dovetail with what Donald Trump wants to do? But in terms of Tim Kaine, she lied about having pneumonia and then fell into the van. People are going to be looking at him going, can I see him as the president? president. And I'm not joking. That's what people are going to be thinking about sitting at home.
This is a super point because they're not big, household names, people will actually be listening to policy. Because, the presidential election should be about policy and about your philosophy. It shouldn't be about your personality and what you did 20 years ago. But unfortunately, we've allowed it to devolve into that.
An Indiana girl.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
So what do we know about Governor Mike Pence that would suggest that he might be preparing for this differently than a Donald Trump?
Well, he's an executive, and I think that's where Tim Kaine and Mike Pence have a lot in common, is they both run states. Tim Kaine was the governor of Virginia, and I think because of that, I ran into Lou Dobbs here in the building, and he said, I think this could be the most substantive policy debate we see of the 4 debates. We don't remember a lot of vice presidential debates. Of course, we remember Lloyd Bentsen and Dan Quayle, and we remember some of Sarah Palin and Joe Biden. Are we going to remember this? But you're absolutely right, Julie. Mike Pence, with a great debate, can shift the narrative just enough to set up Donald Trump for Sunday in St. Louis.
Interesting. We'll be watching it all. And that vice presidential debate is, of course, tomorrow night. Be sure to catch it right here. The battle in Virginia on Fox News Channel, FNC for the cool kids. And tune in all day for the best pre-debate coverage anywhere. The analysis after the contest as well. Your night is made. Pop your corn. Actor Alec Baldwin made his eagerly awaited debut as Donald Trump. Was it eagerly awaited? I don't know. Okay. During the Saturday Night Live season premiere, he parodied the first presidential debate. But can comedy shows like these actually have a real-life impact on the race? Stay with us.
He started the birther movement.
You did.
He says climate change is a hoax invented by China.
It's pronounced China.
It's been spirited. Outnumbered. More of it to come. First, let's go to John Scott with what's coming up in the second hour of Happening Now. Hey, John.
Hi, Eris. In our next hour, you saw it in hour 1. Donald Trump holding an event with veterans talking about what he would do to help the U.S. military. He attacked Hillary Clinton, but also raised some eyebrows with comments he made about vets' mental health. He heads for Colorado this afternoon. We will have more on where the campaign stands. Also awaiting a Hillary Clinton event in Toledo, Ohio, where she will speak on the economy and likely will hammer Trump on the revelations he took a loss of nearly $1 billion back in 1995. Hurricane Matthew smashing Jamaica, Haiti, and Cuba this hour. The U.S. base on Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, has been partially evacuated, and the storm is now a major Category 4. It could be headed for the U.S. coast. We are tracking Matthew ahead. Happening now. Harris.
In the meantime, we pray for Haiti and Jamaica and those islands caught in between.
So much rain coming.
We'll follow you at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
My microphone is broken. She broke it with Obama. She and Obama stole my microphone. They took it to Kenya. They took my microphone to Kenya and they broke it, and now it's broken.
They took it to Kenya. That was after Alec Baldwin debuting his impression of Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live season premiere. The show scoring its highest season premiere ratings since the 2008 campaign. Baldwin will play Trump at least through the end of the election, leading many to wonder what impact the show could have on the 2016 race. Julie, do conservatives have to worry that somehow this impression alone will be the thing that tanks Donald Trump's presidency?
I'm going to predict that Donald Trump will not be president, but it's not going to be because of Alec Baldwin, who is kind of the liberal Donald Trump in many ways. I thought that was actually hilarious, and it's the first time I thought SNL was funny since 2008. When I thought they were just great with Sarah Palin and also with Hillary Clinton. So
you can see Alaska from my house.
And we have Sarah Palin right next to us, Stegan McDowell.
I do Tina Fey doing so.
Oh, okay, which is sort of the same thing. So, no, it's not going to tank Donald Trump. It's just funny. People need to get a sense of humor and relax and stop reading into conspiracy theories about how Lorne Michaels is trying to submarine the man he let host an entire episode of SNL.
Dr. Ben Carson was actually spoofed on Saturday Night Live.
In fact, I was the first person to get 4 segments.
Entering this country every day. I mean, open your eyes, President Obama. It's enough to make me want to flip my top.
How do you think Jay Farrow did as you? Is that weird to see?
It's not weird, but he did a terrible job. You know? First of all, I'm much better looking than that.
Aww. But you found humor with it, though. I mean, you really did. I mean, I guess you could say you haven't arrived until you do SNL. I don't say that, but some do.
I think if we can't laugh at ourselves, we're in pretty sad shape.
Agreed.
I think it did hurt Sarah Palin, though, because the American people knew so little about her, and they took her own words or some of her own words and used them against her. I said Alaska. I should have said, you can see Russia from my house in Alaska. But anyway, but you know, it hurt. Remember when Chevy Chase did Gerald Ford and turned him into a bumbling klutz? That really hurt America's perception of him.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, he was the stumblebum.
Seen on SNL that would hurt Donald Trump. I mean, he makes fun of himself. I mean, he's been on television for a long time. He finds humor in himself.
And it is funny, and I don't have any problem with it. But a lot of times it's the piling on that causes the problem.
Do you think it's equal?
If it's definitely not equal. And if you read Rules for Radicals, I think it's rule number 5, ridicule, ridicule, ridicule. And it begins to sink into the populace.
Can I just say, as a progressive, I don't know one person that's ever read Saul Alinsky or ever heard of him until conservatives started bringing him up. This is like some conspiracy day. We all sit around reading Rules for Radicals.
Can I say, as a well-educated person, that a lot of the progressives don't want you to know about Saul Alinsky. They don't want you to read Saul Alinsky because they don't want people to know what they're doing.
You know what? I promise you there's no top secret reading circle that we're all a part of.
Trump was on SNL not long ago. I think it was in the fall last year, and he was hilarious. He was in that
self-deprecating. Yeah, we'll see if they have both candidates on again.
The Drake song, and he was doing the kind of accountant dance. Yeah. It was awesome.
All right, well, we have more Outnumbered in just a moment. Stay right here.
Wow, social media lit up. Some interesting things on all of your Twitter feeds, especially you and Julie.
You're welcome.
That was a great hour. And thanks for some of the free healthcare advice that you've given David
Absolutely.
about me. During the commercial.
What do you mean free? The bill's coming.
Oh, no. All right. Thank you. Amen. We'll see you back here tomorrow at noon Eastern. For now, happening now.